When Ukraine started receiving F-16s from its Western partners, many labeled the US-made fighter jets a game-changer. They haven't quite lived up to that billing in the sense of bringing about an end to the war, but they've proven vital in many ways. F-16s now patrol Ukraine's skies, taking out drones and missiles in massive numbers, while also being used in offensive operations against Russian positions in Ukraine. Now Ukraine's F-16s are getting even better. Thanks to a devastating new upgrade that makes the F-16s more efficient and accurate than ever before, Russia is in serious trouble. It won't see what's coming, and Russia won't enjoy as much success with its drones because Ukraine's fighter jets are more prepared now than ever before. How do we know? Well, on December 5th, United 24 media reported that some of Ukraine's F-16s have been spotted sporting some new equipment that hadn't been seen before. Specifically, the outlet says the jets appear to be equipped with new advanced targeting pods that allow for integration of a host of weapons, including a US-made precision rocket system that will make it both easier and more cost-effective for Ukraine's F-16s to destroy Russian Shahed and other long-range drones in the future. A picture of the upgrade comes from the Avia OFN Telegram channel, along with a description of what that channel claims to see. Takeoff of F-16AM BN from 107 UAC on AIM-9X, ANAAQ-33 Sniper Pod, and the cherry on the cake, LAU-131 Hydra 70 APKWS II can hang up to 14 missiles of this type. They're used to destroy drones and other small targets due to the economy of air-to-air missiles, the channel declared. That isn't the clearest of descriptions, but the huge takeaways here come from the mentions of the sniper pods and the APKWS II rockets that those pods will enable Ukraine's F-16s to fire. Starting with the latter, APKWS II is the cost-effective rocket system that we mentioned earlier, and Ukraine's upgraded F-16s now house pods that can each hold 7 of these rockets. If you need to know why that matters, it's all in the name. APKWS stands for Advanced Precision Kill Weapon System, which is about as blunt a moniker that a weapon can be given. These rockets, which Army technology says are made by BAE Systems and went into full production in 2012, are designed to be accurate, lethal, and most importantly for Ukraine, cheap. An APKWS II is a 70mm rocket that BAE Systems made in collaboration with the US government, which tells us that the weapon was made to a spec. The US identified an issue and it sought a solution. BAE Systems provided that solution with a rocket system that has a point-and-shoot design, which minimizes training and requires no ongoing maintenance to be effective. The APKWS II can hit both stationary and moving targets, making it extremely versatile, and as the United 24 media post suggests, it's a semi-active, laser-guided weapon. Wing assemblies and folding fins also give the rocket a solid range, potentially allowing Ukraine to strike against targets while its F-16s stay well outside of visual range. US Naval Air Systems Command, or NAVAIR, offers a few more details, noting that the APKWS II was designed to offer the US an inexpensive way to destroy targets while keeping collateral damage to a minimum. The rockets utilize a 10-pound high-explosive warhead, which NAVAIR calls a legacy warhead, implying that it is pulled from other obsolete weapons. It's also compatible with a host of aircraft, including the A-10, AV-8B, along with the AH-1W and UH-1Y choppers. Of course, you can add the F-16 to that list. NAVAIR also notes that the rocket can travel at speeds of up to 1,000 meters per second, or around 2,236 miles per hour. That's almost Mach 3. And that sheer speed makes the APKWS incredibly difficult to stop. As for the weapon's range, a BAE Systems product specification says that the APKWS II's threshold range in a fixed-wing aircraft, such as an F-16, is 11,000 meters. That's around 6.8 miles, which is outside of visual range, but will admittedly require Ukraine to run the risk of its F-16s being spotted by Russian air defense radars if it's going to deploy these new rockets. But that may not be a concern for Ukraine. It's likely to use these rockets to deal with the hordes of drones and missiles that Russia fires into its territory every week, as we'll discuss later in the video. The US is certainly impressed with its own weapon. In August, the US military ordered another $1.7 billion worth of these rockets, which amounts to 55,000 APKWS IIs being delivered to the US Navy and US Army, along with approved foreign military sales customers. That's according to Army recognition. And this mention of approved customers suggests that the US order may have been made so that Ukraine could buy these rocket systems for use in the war against Russia. That's speculation, of course. But what isn't speculative is that the APKWS II alone isn't able to do the drone-busting job that Ukraine needs it to do. We mentioned the targeting pods that have also been sighted on Ukraine's upgraded F-16s, and they are essential to ensuring the APKWS II can hit its targets. According to Euromaidan Press, these pods are AN/AAQ-33 sniper targeting pods, and they offer Ukraine a massive boost to its ability to intercept Russian Shahed drones, along with other long-range drones thanks to their laundry list of features. Among those features, and perhaps the most important, is that these sniper pods use a form of infrared detection that makes it possible for them to spot drones that fly so low they would otherwise evade traditional radars. That infrared capability comes from cameras installed into the pods, with those infrared cameras being joined by high-fidelity daytime cameras that enable the pods to spot their targets no matter when Russia launches one of its massive aerial assaults. Of course, these cameras also add to the already impressive array of radars and electronic countermeasures that are already installed on Ukraine's F-16s. And the sniper pods don't come cheap. They cost around $2 million each, so Ukraine does have to invest heavily when installing them. However, that investment pays off when you realize that they make the $35,000 APKWS II laser-guided rocket much more accurate. Ukraine has spent big up front for an upgrade that could enable it to save millions of dollars in the long run. Stick around as we'll offer a detailed cost breakdown later in the video that explains why this is such a huge deal for Ukraine. On the defensive end, the pods allow an F-16 pilot to spot a Shahed drone due to the heat emitted from the drone's engine or propeller. As long as that heat signature is hotter than the ground below the Shahed, the sniper pod's infrared camera can spot the incoming Shahed from several miles away. All the F-16 pilot has to do from there is track the drone, get within range, and then destroy it with an APKWS II. But there's another advantage to these sniper pods that could also make them useful for future Ukrainian offensive operations, as Euromaidan Press explains. As a bonus, any F-16 pilot using his sniper as his primary sensor could fly and fight without switching on his radar, the outlet says. That's advisable, as Russian radar receivers can detect Ukrainian radars, pinpointing the locations of airborne F-16s and exposing them to long-range missile fire. Sticking to sniper pods alone makes it harder for Russia's air defenses to target Ukraine's F-16s when the fighters are dealing with drones. It also raises the possibility of Ukraine conducting stealthy assaults on known Russian positions by taking tracking radars out of the equation. Ukraine appears to have installed a combination of upgrades on its F-16s that make them more lethal than ever before, but the odds are high that it won't be lethality that is on Ukraine's mind, at least not immediately. Its sniper pods and APKWS II rockets are more likely to become the country's cost-efficient way of dealing with Russian Shahed drones and perhaps even missiles that manage to evade Ukraine's other air defense systems. And Ukraine needs a cost-effective countermeasure. The F-16 weapons it's been using to take Shaheds down cost a fortune. A single Russian Shahed or Shahed-type drone doesn't cost a lot of money to build. In August, Defense Express reported that Russia has managed to pull its Shahed manufacturing costs down from $300,000 in 2022 to just $70,000 in 2025. Euromaidan Press suggests that the number is even lower, quoting a figure of just $50,000. Regardless, the point is that these drones are very cheap weapons that Russia can launch in huge numbers without incurring as much cost. Literally dozens of Shahed drones can be sent into Ukraine for the cost of a single Iskander missile, for instance. Ukraine has been using F-16s to shoot down these drones, as we've already explained. However, the standard weapons deployed in these fighter jets aren't fit for that purpose. That certainly works, extremely well in fact. However, the sheer cost of those missiles means that Ukraine is losing a huge amount of money every time it uses one of them to take out a Shahed. Take the AIM-9 Sidewinder, loaded into many of Ukraine's F-16s right now. Each of those missiles costs $400,000 to make, Euromaidan Press reports. That's good for Russia, even if a Sidewinder takes out a Shahed. That means that Russia has just cost Ukraine anywhere between $330,000 and $350,000, depending on the two Shahed manufacturing prices we mentioned earlier. Now add the APKWS II into the mix. An APKWS II laser-guided rocket costs just $35,000 to build. That's between $15,000 and $35,000 less than the cost of a Russian Shahed. And it's here where the APKWS II really shines. Granted, Ukraine has had to spend several $1 million on the sniper pods needed to make APKWS II effective. But even then, Ukraine only has to destroy between 57 and 133 Shaheds using its new weapon to repay that $2 million, based on the price difference between the APKWS II and a Russian Shahed. It isn't quite accurate to say that Ukraine is getting the best of the return on investment battle after that, as the cost of the rockets hasn't been accounted for here. But it won't take many more successful engagements for Ukraine to reach the point where it's in the black in terms of its Shahed busting outlay. Plus, it only takes 5 AIM-9 Sidewinders to hit the same $2 million price tag of a sniper pod. That alone shows you why these pods are such valuable assets for Ukraine's F-16s. If it seems like a lot to ask for a Ukrainian F-16 to destroy between 57 and 133 Shahed drones to justify the upgrades Ukraine is making, you may need to know more about the sheer scale of Russia's drone assaults on Ukraine in 2025. This year has been unlike any other in the war so far when it comes to Russia's aerial assaults. Back in September, Al Jazeera published a chart that highlighted how much more intense Russia's drone-based airstrikes on Ukrainian cities and infrastructure have become in 2025. During the first couple of months of the year, those strikes typically included around 75 to 100 drones, with more intense strikes using around 185. The number started rising into the spring, albeit at a fairly slow pace. However, 185 drones went from being an occasional number to the approximate average, with several Russian strikes using 200 to 250 drones. Then the summer came, and so did far more of the drones. By the end of August, Russia had launched well over a dozen strikes using 300 drones or more, with several of those strikes landing in the 500 to 650 drone range. Early September also saw Russia launch what was then its largest drone assault on Ukraine to date, in which it deployed well over 800 Shahed-type and other long-range drones. All told, Russia has launched 37,000 air attacks on Ukraine between January and early September 2025 alone. That period also saw Russia break its record for most drones launched in a single month. July saw Ukraine have to deal with a staggering 6,443 drones across 31 days, which averages out to about 207 drones per day. Suddenly, destroying between 57 and 133 Shaheds to make back the cost of the F-16 upgrades doesn't seem so unfeasible. Russia is showing no signs of slowing down with its long-range assaults. In September, the Kyiv Independent revealed that Ukraine's intelligence has determined that Russia can produce up to 2,700 Shahed drones a month. That's not including the dummy Shahed-type drones that Russia sends into Ukraine, which have no warheads and are used to divert Ukraine's air defenses from firing on the real Shaheds. The number also doesn't include the many other types of long-range drones that Russia builds or Shaheds that it purchases from Iran. And as if to emphasize just how devastating it wants its constant aerial assaults to be, Russia launched another of those attacks at around the same time that news broke of Ukraine's upgraded F-16s. December 6th saw The Guardian report on a massive overnight attack that included over 650 drones and 51 missiles. This is the scale of the threat that Ukraine's F-16s, along with the country's other air defenses, now face from Russia. And as United 24 Media revealed on November 19th, Ukraine's F-16s are playing a key role in minimizing the damage caused by these constant barrages. Between when the first F-16 arrived in Ukraine in August 2024 and up to November 2025, Ukraine's US-made fighter jets have destroyed 1,300 missiles and drones. Our pilots quickly mastered the new systems and turned them into one of the most effective tools in countering the aggressor, a Ukrainian statement read. And it's hard to deny the effectiveness of Ukraine's F-16s. But again, that number of destroyed missiles and drones brings us back to the cost issue. There are no specific figures quoted in terms of how many missiles Ukraine's F-16s used to shoot these projectiles down versus how many were destroyed by cannon fire. But even if we assume as few as a quarter of Russia's projectiles were destroyed using sidewinders, that would still amount to around $130 million spent to destroy 325 drones. With the APKWS II, Ukraine would bring that cost down to $11.375 million. The cost of sniper pods is more than justified by this type of disparity, especially when those pods make Ukraine's F-16s even more effective. After all, there's something else to consider. With its new upgrades, a Ukrainian F-16 can take 14 APKWS II rockets into the air, according to F-16.net, which touts itself as the ultimate F-16 resource. An F-16 can carry up to 6 Sidewinder missiles. So Ukraine is getting more than twice the firepower for a fraction of the cost thanks to its new upgrades. Its F-16s will now be able to take out up to 14 Shahed-type drones, along with whatever they can destroy with their other weapons, which is huge when you consider the scale of the Russian aerial assaults we've seen during the second half of 2025. Let's come back to the sniper pods for a moment. Earlier, we mentioned that these pods make it possible for Ukraine's F-16s to spot low-flying Shaheds that the fighters' jet radars might miss. That's important too, because those low-flying Shaheds are likely the drones that Ukraine has been struggling to intercept of late. After all, if an F-16's radar can't spot them, you can assume that the radars attached to Ukraine's ground-based air defense systems are experiencing similar problems. In fact, we don't have to assume, as we know that Ukraine's drone interception rate has declined in recent months. On November 12th, Ukraine Business News reported that October saw Ukraine's drone interception rate fall to the lowest it's been since the beginning of 2024. The rate hit 80%, suggesting that Russia's strategy of overwhelming Ukraine's air defenses through volume is working. F-16s have helped, but the loadout issues we mentioned earlier limit what they can do. Again, 14 APKWS II rockets allow for more of Russia's drones to be destroyed in a single F-16 sortie than 6 Sidewinders, and that's without considering the possibility that Ukraine's F-16s will be loaded with other weapons beyond its new cost-effective rockets. The maths is really simple here. More weapons on an F-16 equals more Shahed drones destroyed in flight. If Ukraine uses its new upgrades to specifically target the low-flying Shahed types and long-range drones that its other air defenses often miss, we might see the interception rate climb back up as Putin continues to launch hundreds of drones per attack. There's one more potential benefit of Ukraine now having access to sniper pods and APKWS II rockets. It may be able to use the latter, at the very least, in other Western aerial platforms. Right now, it looks like F-16s are the only platforms Ukraine has access to that can fire APKWS II. However, an APKWS brochure released by BAE Systems contains an interesting nugget of information that could end up benefiting Ukraine massively in the long run. That information comes right at the end of the document in a small section covering potential platforms that could have the rocket system integrated into them. Among those platforms is a fighter jet that will have Ukraine paying attention to future possibilities, the Dassault Rafale. Why would Ukraine care about that jet potentially being compatible with the weapons it's now installing into its F-16s? On November 17th, the BBC reported that Ukraine and France had agreed on a historic deal that will see France supply Ukraine with 100 Rafale F-4 fighter jets. Those jets will arrive in Ukraine over the course of the next decade. But even with that trickle of jets coming in, Ukraine may eventually get the option to integrate sniper pods and APKWS II rockets into its new French jets. This is dependent on BAE Systems, which has only suggested that such integration is a possibility. We don't know if it's worked on the integration or if it might consider doing so now that Ukraine is going to start receiving Rafales, but there is a possibility. And that means Ukraine's upgraded F-16s might not be the end point. They could just be the beginning of a Ukrainian Air Force overhaul that may spell very bad news for Putin's ambitions in Ukraine. We focused on Ukraine's F-16s and their new upgrades as defensive assets in this video. However, there is plenty of potential for Ukraine to use its US-made fighter jets in an offensive capacity, and it knows exactly how to do that. Russia learned that the hard way in southern Myanmar when Ukraine trapped Russian troops with a tactical retreat before its F-16s unleashed hell. Find out more in our video, and remember to subscribe to the Military Show for more coverage of Ukraine's latest tweaks and upgrades to its ever-growing arsenal of weapons. And thank you, as always, for watching.